In your notes today, there's a verse from Proverbs, and this is Solomon, and he's talking about the lazy, the selfish person. And what he says is they crave, okay? All day long, the lazy and the selfish, they crave and crave. Everyone say crave. You know that feeling, don't you? You just crave for more. But look at else what it says. It says, but the righteous gives and what? And they do not hold back. I love that, okay? And that's a great picture. On one hand, one group of people just crave more and more for themselves. But on the other hand, the righteous, they don't hold back. And followers of Jesus do not hold back in being generous. Followers of Jesus do not hold back and are generous. Okay, I think it's a great picture. Because some of you today are going to be uncomfortable. You say, oh no, I came to church on the day he's talking about generosity. You know, so I shouldn't have come today, okay? But you're here, okay? And I want to talk to you. The reason was because I used to be like this. I used to be not an extravagant giver myself, okay? And I used to justify the reasons why I wouldn't tithe and I wouldn't give. I was just like that myself, okay? So, I want to talk to you today about 3 different mindsets that will help us on our journey. Is that all right? Okay. Number 1, I want you to write this down. First of all, there's one mindset about generosity, and that one is the bag. Everyone say the bag. And I want you to write this down. There's never enough, okay? There's never enough. Now let me give you a story. It's from the Old Testament, and this is from the book of Haggai. It's in your notes there. But let me provide you with the context because it's a different story that we're normally used to. Israel was in captivity in Babylon for about 60 to 70 years, and Cyrus gave permission for them to return back to Israel for the one purpose of rebuilding the city, and in particular to rebuild the temple of God. Okay? And so all the people came back, and they started to build the walls which Nehemiah was involved with. Then they went to the temple, the foundation was laid down, and a bit of the altar started to be built. But then the Samaritans who lived nearby and had taken over the land started to raise opposition. And so all of the work in the temple just stopped. Okay? And so some people started to say, well, it's not the right time to rebuild the temple. And so what everyone did was they started to build their own homes. And they were nice homes. And the Bible talks about they had these panelled walls and everything and beautiful homes. And there's nothing wrong with having a nice home. There's nothing wrong with that. But what they did was they focused on themselves and they didn't focus on God. Okay? And Haggai comes along and says, you do realise we're having a drought. And he associated the drought with their disobedience of building the temple. Okay? And so in your notes there this morning, he says something. Because the drought had affected their harvest, and as a result of their harvest, they had no finances. And then Haggai says this, doesn't matter how hard you work, doesn't matter how many hours you put in, you're not blessed. And he says it this way, you eat, you don't have enough. You drink, but you're not filled with drink. You clothe yourself, but no one is warm. And the person who earns wages to put in a bag with holes. And what he's saying here is, because you have placed yourself first, I am not blessing you in all that you try to do. Okay? They didn't build the temple as God had given them an opportunity, and they focused on themselves. But when they did obey God, later on we find it when they did obey God, God gives this rural story, this example. He says your basket and your kneading trough. Now, a kneading trough is when you have flour and water and you put in a little bit of this, a bit of that, and you just push it around to make your bread. And God says, if you obey me, your basket and your kneading bread will be blessed, and there will be enough. Okay. Now let me go to the New Testament. And it's not in your notes, but if you've got your Bible, we're going to go to Luke chapter 6, verse 38. And Jesus says this, give, everyone say give? He says, give, and it will be given to you. And then he says this, it's an interesting phrase he says, a good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over, will be poured out in your lap. Now what Jesus is saying you can either keep your stuff, hoard it, but it won't do you any good, or you can give and it will be multiplied. Okay? He didn't say you'd be hoarding and be blessed. He says, if you give, you shall be blessed. Now, what on earth is give? It'll be given to you. Good measure, pressed down, shaken together, poured into a lap. Okay, just look at me for a moment. This is a rural community, so we don't really understand the picture. What would happen when Jesus was speaking this to the crowd? They all understood, and they would have been nodding their head because they would have owned blocks of land and they grew crops and everything. And so what happened was, in the day, a landowner would get their workers, and those workers were paid by an hour, and they'd have a basket, and they would go out and they'd collect some of the wheat and some of the chaff and everything and pull it up, and they might fill it up to say 70% of their basket because they're paid by the hour, and they'd walk back to the barn and empty it, and they'd do that all day. Okay. But the landowner, there was a rule in the Old Testament, and it came through in the New Testament, that the poor and the hungry people, they would leave some of the wheat around the edges of the field so that the poor and the hungry could be blessed. Got it? Okay, got the picture? So the landowner would get a basket because he was blessed of God. He wanted to bless those who were less fortunate. He would get a basket, he would fill it, cram it, shake it, cram it again with as much stuff until it was almost pouring over, and he would walk around the edge of the field until it spilled over so the people who were poor could also be blessed. Because he said, God has blessed me and I'm going to bless others. And that's the picture he's portraying to us. Let me modernise it. You go to the movies. How many people like popcorn? Okay, and you want to buy the big packet of popcorn, don't you? You know? And so what do? Maybe you don't do it, but I do it. I buy the big box, and you put it there, you hit the button, it goes, and you fill it up, you stop, no one's looking, you push down, you press down, you shake it, press it down again, fill it up, press down again, and fill it up again until it's kind of like this. And you're walking off like this into the movie theatre, not trying to lose any, and what's happening? It's spilling all over. That's the blessing of God. Slurpees are the same. You've done it, haven't you? You go up to the Slurpee machine. You fill it up, you get your straw, push it down a little bit, fill it up, hit it, and it goes down a bit more, fill it up, and then, if you're smart, you put the clear plastic over the top, and you fill it up again, right up to the hole, you know, and then you take your straw out and fill it again, and fill it up, you know, and then it's spewing over the top, and then you're happy. That's the picture. When you give, that's what God does for you. That's the picture that Jesus was describing. A basket full, pressed down, shaken, overflowing. It's a great picture. When you give, God gives extravagantly back to you. Right? Give, it'll be given to you, good measure. Press down. And you're going to the movie theatre with it all over your shirt and all over your dress, okay? So, a bag mindset. A lot of people live with a bag mindset. Always struggling. Okay? I can't improve my life. It's not working. Right? I want to improve. I wish I could give more, Pastor. I can't afford it. Got all these car repayments, Xbox repayments, household payments. Yes, I understand that. I'd love to tithe, but there's not enough left in the bag at the end of the week. And Haggai says, if you don't put God first, the result is you'll never believe that there's enough anyways. Okay? And here we go. In Haggai, God frustrated them. He sent a drought. Now, I don't know if he does that today. I'm not too sure. We're in a brand new period where salvation is really available, but God frustrated this group of people because they were disobedient. Because they weren't concerned about the glory of God, they were concerned about themselves. And I don't know about you, but sometimes our words that we speak reveal a bit of a bag mindset, don't we? Sometimes we say stuff like this, I just don't have enough. Money doesn't grow on mango trees, that's right. And she gets all the breaks, I don't get it. And that's the way, he just gets richer and richer. What a nice car he has. That's a Hyundai. Only blessed people have Hyundais.
Yes, amen.
And we have this bag mindset, my window seat, my chocolate cake. This is my bag. Judas had a bag. He was the treasurer. Imagine putting a thief in charge of the treasury. Okay. He also stole from him. And you remember this woman whose lifestyle was similar to our parliamentarians. This woman had a lifestyle. Well, they don't seem to worry about it, do they? Do they? I'll just put that in there. I'm going to back out now.